How's it going, guys? Jacob Dupre here at Full Compass, and I'm here today to talk about the Nord Grand 2. This is the second generation of the Nord Grand, and there's many new things about it that are great upgrades from the first generation, but of course, the Grand has the pianist in mind. At the very top of the list, you have the Kawai hammer action keybed that's been upgraded and improved. The chassis has been upgraded. The mechanical noise is lower, it's quieter. And as a pianist at heart myself, it feels great to play. It also does have a sample synth section as well, so the sounds really go through a lot of different categories. There's lots of options here, and it's got the triple sensor now. You can be so expressive on these instruments, of course, with the Grands, the EPs, all the different categories. So I'm really excited to dive more into what's new about the Grand 2. One of the exciting new things is you now have 2 layers for each sound engine, for each section. So for piano, you have layer A and B, 2 different sounds you can have. Synth, you have layer A and B. And each one of those layers has its own dedicated effects chain. So if I have a patch here with multiple layers, I can go from A to B, and all of the different effects that I'm going to add just show up there. So that's a really great addition. You can also set some of them global. It'll affect all the layers. And with the reverb, you can actually select a dry-wet balance that's particular to each layer. There's been some updates to the software that you can use with the Nord Grand 2. And one of those is the Sound Manager that allows you to take the programs you've created in the Nord. You can back them up. You can put sounds on. You can save your whole set list interfacing with your laptop. But now, the Nord, the sound library that you can access from the website, you can now do all within the app. So you can actually browse the sounds and put them on your Nord all right there. And similarly, the Nord sample editor allows you to record straight into the app. So of course you can drag your own samples in, map them to the keyboard. There'll be auto pitch mapping, so it can create a playable instrument out of a single sample. But now you can record straight in. Before we go into the specifics of what's new about the Nord Grand, I just want to do a quick overview. Maybe you're new to Nords. Maybe you want to just know kind of generally how they're laid out and work, because pretty much all of them across the whole line are similar in that way. So the program knob is how you're going through presets or programs, and those are things that are using all the layers and the various effects over here. And what you can do is tweak everything to your heart's desire and then store as. And you can change the name of that. You can go to the empty programs that are later on in the alphabet, I, J, K, element, all the way through the alphabet. And that's how you can customize, make your own set lists of your sounds that you create. But I do have to say, I love just going through and listening to the presets that have been put as the default list in the instrument. And there are just some really inspiring, awesome sounds that have been put in there. And just the panel layout itself, you have the pianos, 2 piano layers, the synth here, your kind of main navigation in the middle, and then you have all your effects on this side, everything from modulation, equalizer, amp, all the way to the reverb. The other thing to know is, if I go to this preset here, you can see this little LED light is on. That's the split point. And so I can actually go through and I can change the position, and you can see that little light will travel around and show you where your instruments are split. You have low, and up on each layer, so you can put your sounds wherever you want. So this is a good example. This is a bass and upright piano split, kind of a classic one. See, there's my split point there. Now let's go into what's new about the Grand 2. The panel layout has been adjusted. I've already mentioned that you have the layers, 2 layers for each engine, sound engine, but you also have faders for each one. That's a really important thing. It's really great to be able to adjust the sounds as you're going, and also when you're creating presets, you now have volume control over each patch, for each sound. So here's a little taste. It's got some beautiful hall reverb on that preset. But you can see that, as I'm going, if I'm starting from this preset or creating my own sound, if I want to adjust the volumes and kind of tweak the mix, it's really easy to do. And for each layer, you have that independent effects chain. So for each of the 4, you can have your own set of effects. Of course, again, the reverb, you can set the dry-wet balance individually for each one of those. I'm going to show you another preset, another program that uses a really nice array of effects. This one's called Pearl Drops. Yeah, so with that one, you have a synth pad, you've got a sweet saw pad, and then you've got an EP and a piano layered together, an upright piano. And you can see, it's good to show you now, if you click each layer, you can see the effects that are applied to it. So from layer A, there's the effects here. I can see I've got a chorus on, the EQ is engaged, the delay. Also, I can do FX focus, and I can go from piano A and B, or the synth, and I can see all the effects that are applied to that layer. There's been a variety of new effects, different settings and options that have been added here in the effects section, and again, many of those coming from the Stage series. In Mod 1 alone, there are a few new ones. Here's a nice EP sound that uses Pan 2, gives you a really nice classic vibrato kind of sound. Here's a sample. And for that pan, I can affect either the rate or the amount. Another effect I really like is this one called Spin, and it emulates essentially a rotating speaker, which you might hear as like a Leslie speaker, something you've probably heard if you're listening to organ, like classic B3 organ, but you can now apply it to everything in the piano or the synth, and it of course sounds beautiful on electric pianos. So here's a taste. Yeah, so man, I love that effect. One thing to note about that is you have underneath the button where you can select the effect, control pedal. So when that's switched on, which another thing of how Nords work, you have the shift button, and that's how you turn on those kinds of settings that are underneath like that. So now with control pedal on, if I have an expression pedal attached, I can actually control that effect without having to take my hands off the instrument. So just what I was doing here. I can be doing that with the pedal and just continue playing without having to think about it. There's the wah effect, which is really great. Of course, that's good on clavinet. Switch over to one of those. Several different models that I can go through. And that rate knob, that's essentially kind of doing a filter sweep there. That can be controlled with the pedal as well. Yeah, man, these sounds, I I have a hard time stopping when I'm playing because it's just so much fun. Moving on to the Mod 2 effects, you have some new additions there. One of them being you have stereo and mono options. So here's another EP sound that's currently set to mono on the chorus 2. And if I want to take that off mono, just a quick shift click, and now. Back to mono. Another effect I really like is vibe, and it's pretty vibey. And that beautiful hall reverb is on there, but turn some of the other effects off. Here's just the vibe itself. So on Mod 2, you get rate and amount, just like on Mod 1. But you know, a quick note about this, it's really great to have these effects right at your fingertips on a keyboard. You know, something that's become more popular of late is keyboardists using outboard gear. You know, maybe they use guitar pedals or something like that to incorporate into their sounds. And of course, that's awesome, you know, to be able to do that. But what I think is even cooler is having effects of that quality already built in. And the whole thing of Nord is that you don't have to dive into a menu. You have all the buttons right here. If you want to add that chorus effect, boom, it's right there. If you want to turn on reverb, boom, it's right there, right at your fingertips. After Mod 1 and 2, you have the equalizer that's got bass, treble, and then a mid that you can sweep. You can put it where you want. It'll go here from 200 all the way up to 8K. Below that is the amp simulator, and that's had some updates to it as well. The JC and Twin simulators have been upgraded, and then also Small gives you this new thing where you can really get a vintage kind of radio sound. There's a really awesome preset in here I like called Tiny Whirly that really shows it off well. Yeah, get your Ray Charles effect going. But just a taste of the other settings too. So here's Twin. And you have the drive knob here to affect, you know, the amount of drive that you're getting, that effect of that sound. Below that is the compressor. It's a pretty simple one. You flip it on, you've got the amount, and once you see the active light on, that means the compression is being added. Moving on to delay, there's been some new additions to that as well. You have ping pong, 3 options for that. And those 3 options are actually affecting where the repeats are being placed, you know, in the center, as far as where the center is. So let's go to this 80s Pluck Synth C64 program and check out the ping pongs. Here's number 1. You have a dry, wet balance, so you can really crank it, and I'll turn off some of the other effects so we can focus on it. And you have the feedback knob as well, which is how you're affecting the length of that tail. And if I go all the way to wet, we're really just hearing the ping pong effect. So here's 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So you should be able to hear that if you're listening in the correct way for that. Then next to that you have filters that you can apply, so that will actually set kind of a different EQ to each one of those. You have high pass, low pass, and band pass. And then this other effect that's pretty cool that's called flam. I'm flipping it on here with the shift click once again, and it kind of speaks for itself, so I'll just show you. And it's probably a little extreme, but that gives you the sense of what it's doing. It's creating these repeated notes to give it a flam effect. Reverb is the next effect, and there's been some additions to that. We now have a spring reverb, which sounds really beautiful. Here's an EP sound. Crank up the wet a little bit more. Really beautiful. And it goes from, smaller kind of rooms to large. You have room to booth, then the spring reverb, then to stage, hall, and cathedral. The cathedral one sounds really beautiful. And there's also with that one, especially with the bigger ones like hall and cathedral, there's now this setting called chorale that adds this really cool kind of pitch modulation, this very kind of fluttery effect to the reverb. And I'm just going to give you a taste of that. Now switching that off, so just the hall reverb by itself. It's so cool, I really like that. There's just that fluttery thing up top, it's beautiful. Going back over, now we can talk about the sound engines, which got 2, you got piano, sample, synth. With piano, one of the new things is dynamic compression, which I will first show you and then explain. So here's one of my favorite presets called Keith and Clone. And I love Keith Jarrett, so. So if I'm playing something like that, I turn dynamic compression all the way to 3, which is the most I can have. I'm playing with about the same intensity, but hear how much louder it got. It's essentially creating this effect where the velocity is being evened out, kind of like a velocity processor or velocity curve setting. So if I'm playing something heavier, say, maybe I'm doing something like this. I'm putting lots of accents in there. I'm doing that on purpose, kind of digging in. If I were to turn dynamic compression on, play the same way. It's creating a way more even performance. So even when I'm digging in or playing a little bit softer, it's kind of bringing everything to the same level. Also new is unison, which gives you, kind of a chorusy kind of effect. So here's the extreme of unison. Probably sounds really beautiful on upright sounds. Here's off. 1, 2, and then 3. Going on to sample synth, which has not just synth sounds, but many great samples of all categories. You've got instruments, wind instruments, orchestral instruments, but also different kinds of synthesizers, lead synth, pads, all kinds of stuff that allow you to create beautiful layers with the piano engines. One of the new things about Sample Synth is now, rather than just having kind of a default poly mode where you can play chords, you know, like this, you now have mono and legato. So if you want to have more of a single line kind of feature, and you have a glide as well. And you can switch from mono and legato this way. Here's glide 2. And then an even longer one. You also have vibrato, which you can set the time so you can delay when the vibrato comes in. You can just have it on here. But one cool thing that you have now is you can actually choose the desired time for the vibrato to come in. And with some of these vibratos, they are specifically tailored to the sound. So you have here a jazz clarinet, and some thought's been put into having a vibrato that is a little bit more realistic to what the true instrument is. Yeah, it's a pretty nice sounding clarinet. But if you don't want to just have it, you know, on all the time, even if you turn it off, you can actually use this button over here called vibrato, and you can choose when the vibrato comes in. So if you want to play shorter notes, then you hold something longer. You want the vibrato to come in there, kind of like so. So that allows you to make the sound even more expressive. A new addition to the synth section is Spitfire strings, which are beautiful sounding strings. I was so glad to hear about this pairing and having these kinds of quality samples on an instrument like the Nord Grand 2. So here's a little taste of that. And the thing that I really love about it is that you can be expressive with it. You can play with dynamics on here, which works similar to the dynamic compression on the pianos. You can change the effect of the performance. So if I have it off, you know, I'm playing softly, but I'm getting a full sound. You know, if I dig in, it's not going to really make much of a difference. But with dynamics on 3, on the most extreme, I can be very expressive, and I can play it a little bit more true to the instrument itself. Going down to the pedals, there are some additions there. You can now do continuous pedaling. So before, if you're thinking in MIDI terms, you've got 0, 127, either your sustain's on or off. But now, this pedal can actually get all the gradations between it. So for you real pianists out there, you can do half damping type techniques, half pedaling techniques with this new pedal and get that effect. With the triple pedal, you have a cool thing you can do. You can keep the sustain on the right, but you can actually set the other 2 pedals to change programs. So just like I've been doing the whole time on the main knob here, changing through the different presets that probably if you're gigging on this, you've set them all up, you've got your set list all in order. If you're playing, you can go from sound to sound with the pedals underneath. But there's also been the addition of a foot switch that you can put in. So if you want to leave the triple pedal alone, so you've got the una corda, sostenuto pedal, and sustain pedal exactly as they normally are, you can still change programs hands-free with that foot switch. And that's a look at the Nord Grand 2. If you've got any questions about it or any other Nord keyboards, you can get in touch with your Full Compass sales representative. And thanks so much for watching.